The man in the black suit slammed his fist on the mahogany desk so hard that the coffee cup jumped and spilled across classified documents. 35 years, Director Harrison's voice cracked with fury. 35 years we've been searching for Graves's technology, and now you're telling me some broke Secret Service agent with a bum knee just bought the property for $50. He grabbed the surveillance photograph and thrust it toward the agent standing at attention. The photo showed a limping man and a young boy walking toward a ruined cabin. Sir, we had no warning. The county auction moved faster than... I don't want excuses, I want that technology. Graves's energy devices could power military operations for decades. They could win wars. And now they belong to a man who doesn't even know what he's sitting on. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes cold as steel. Find out what Marcus Cole knows. Find out what his son discovers. And if they find Graves's laboratory before we do... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Before we continue with what happened next, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this incredible story to the very end. Leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories travel across the world. Now let me take you back to where it all began, to a man who had lost everything and was about to find something that would change the world forever. The fluorescent lights of the unemployment office buzzed like angry insects above Marcus Cole's head. He sat in a plastic chair that was too small for his frame, holding a rejection letter in hands that had once protected presidents and foreign dignitaries. 3 months. 3 months since the bullet. 3 months since everything fell apart. Mr. Cole? The clerk's voice cut through his thoughts. Mr. Cole, you're next. Marcus pushed himself up, wincing as pain shot through his left knee, the joint that had once allowed him to sprint to dive. Besmucked to throw himself between danger and the people he protected, now screamed in protest at the simple act of standing. He limped to the window. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. The clerk didn't look sorry. She looked tired, bored, ready for her lunch break. Your application for extended benefits has been denied. Your disability pension is your primary income source now. That pension is $1,800 a month. My rent alone is $1,600. I understand, sir, but there's nothing more we can do. Next, Marcus stood frozen for a moment, processing the mathematics of his destruction. $1,800. $1,600 for rent. That left $200 for food, gas, electricity. Phone medicine for his knee, school supplies for Ethan, and every other expense that came with keeping a 10-year-old boy alive. It wasn't possible. The numbers simply didn't work. He walked out of the unemployment office into the October chill, his breath forming small clouds in the air. His 2009 Honda Accord sat in the parking lot, rust spreading across the wheel wells like a disease. The engine had been making a sound for 2 weeks now, a grinding that promised expensive repairs he couldn't afford. Marcus lowered himself into the driver's seat and sat motionless, staring at the cracked dashboard. His wallet lay on the passenger seat. He picked it up and counted the contents for the 100th time that week. 2 20s, a 10, $50. That was it. That was everything standing between his son and hunger. His phone buzzed. A text from Ethan's school. Reminder, field trip permission slip and $25 fee due tomorrow. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. $25. Half of everything he had for a field trip to a museum his son would forget about within a week. He couldn't do it. Couldn't spare the money. But how do you tell a 10-year-old boy that he can't go on the field trip because his father failed? How do you explain that the man who used to guard the most powerful people in the world can't even afford to send his son to a museum? Marcus started the engine, listening to the grinding sound that had gotten worse since yesterday. He had maybe a month before the car died completely. Maybe less. The drive to Ethan's school took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of grinding engine sounds and grinding thoughts, the two grinding together until Marcus couldn't tell which was louder. He pulled into the pickup line and spotted his son immediately. Ethan stood apart from the other kids, his backpack hanging from one shoulder, his dark hair falling across his forehead. He was thinner than he should be. Marcus had been skipping meals so Ethan could eat full portions, but somehow the boy knew. Somehow he always knew. Ethan climbed into the passenger seat and immediately moved the wallet to the center console, handling it carefully as if he understood that every dollar inside was precious. Hey, Dad? Hey, buddy, how was school? Fine. Ethan pulled out a notebook and began sketching his pencil, moving in quick, confident strokes. Mrs. Patterson said I have the best observational skills in the class. She said I notice things other kids miss. Marcus felt a small surge of pride. That's because I trained you. Remember the games we used to play? Count the exits, watch the hands, notice what doesn't belong. I remember. Ethan's pencil kept moving. I noticed that Tommy Martinez has been wearing the same shirt for 3 days, and that Sophia Chen got new glasses, but she's pretending they're her old ones because she's embarrassed, and that the substitute teacher in math class was really nervous and kept checking his phone like he was waiting for bad news. Marcus glanced at his son. The boy saw everything. It was a gift, the same gift that had made Marcus excel in the Secret Service, but it was also a burden. Ethan saw the empty refrigerator. Ethan saw the bills piling up on the counter. Ethan saw his father limping worse each day. Ethan saw everything, and he said nothing because he was trying to protect his father from knowing that he knew. "What are you drawing?" Marcus asked. Ethan held up the notebook. It was a house. A big house with a wraparound porch and tall windows and a yard where a dog could run. The same house he'd been drawing for months in various forms from various angles. "I call it home," Ethan said. "I haven't found where it is yet, but I'll know it when I see it." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "That's a beautiful house, buddy." "Mom would have liked it." Ethan's voice was matter-of-fact, but his pencil pressed harder against the paper. "She always said she wanted a porch where she could drink coffee in the morning and watch the birds." Elena, 2 years gone, and the wound was still fresh. Pancreatic cancer stage, 6 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. Marcus had held her hand at the end while Ethan slept in the waiting room, too young to understand that his mother was slipping away with each labored breath. Her last words, "Take care of our boy, promise me." He had promised, and every day since he had been failing that promise a little more. "Dad," Ethan's voice pulled him back. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, buddy, just thinking." "You're thinking about money again. You get a line between your eyebrows when you think about money." Marcus forced a smile. "You notice too much." "You taught me to notice." Ethan returned to his drawing, adding details to the house. "I know we don't have much, Dad. I know things are hard. You don't have to pretend." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His 10-year-old son was trying to comfort him, trying to ease the burden of pretending everything was fine. "Ethan, it's okay. We'll figure it out. We always figure it out." Ethan looked up from his drawing and his eyes. Elena's eyes were steady and certain. "Mom said you were the strongest person she ever knew. She said you could handle anything, so I know we'll be okay. I just know it." Marcus couldn't speak. He gripped the steering wheel and focused on the road, blinking back tears that he couldn't let his son see. They drove in silence for a while, the grinding engine the only sound. "Dad," Ethan's voice was smaller now, hesitant. "There's a field trip tomorrow, to the Natural History Museum, but it costs $25, and I know that's a lot, so I told Mrs. Patterson I didn't want to go anyway. I said museums are boring." Ethan: "It's true, museums are boring. All those dead animals standing around. Who wants to look at that?" Ethan's voice was too bright, too casual. "Besides, I'd rather stay home and work on my drawings. I'm going to design the inside of the house next, all the rooms and everything." Marcus pulled into their apartment complex parking lot and turned off the engine. The grinding sound died, replaced by silence that felt heavy with everything they weren't saying. "Ethan, look at me." His son turned those brown eyes, with their gold flecks meeting his. "You don't have to protect me. You don't have to pretend you don't want things. That's my job to worry about money and take care of you, not the other way around." "I know, Dad. But we're a team, right? That's what Mom always said." "The Cole family team." Marcus pulled his son into a hug, holding him tight enough to hide the tears that finally spilled down his cheeks. The Cole family team, down to 2 members now, down to $50. Down to a grinding car and a cramped apartment and a future that looked like a wall with no doors. But still a team. "Come on," Marcus said, releasing Ethan and wiping his eyes quickly. "Let's go make dinner. I think we have enough for spaghetti." They climbed the stairs to their second-floor apartment, Marcus's knee protesting every step. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen that doubled as a dining room. The furniture was second-hand, the carpet was stained, and the heating never quite worked right. But it was theirs. For another 30 days at least. Marcus had hidden the eviction notice behind the couch cushions where Ethan wouldn't find it. 30 days to come up with back rent they didn't have. 30 days before they joined the statistics of homeless veterans sleeping in shelters or worse. He couldn't let that happen. He wouldn't. "Dad, there's mail." Ethan grabbed the stack from the box by the door and flipped through it as they walked. Bill, credit card offer, Bill." He stopped at one envelope. "This one doesn't have a stamp. Someone just put it in the box." Marcus took the envelope. Plain white, no return address. His name was written on the front in handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Fauquier County tax auction this Saturday. 9 a.m. Lot 47 rural property, 3.2 acres with cabin back taxes, $50 minimum bid. $50 some things are worth more than money. Marcus read the message 3 times. A property auction, a cabin on 3 acres, minimum bid of $50, exactly what he had in his wallet. What is it, Dad? I don't know. Marcus turned the envelope over, looking for any clue about who had sent it. Nothing. Someone wants me to go to an auction. An auction for what? A cabin. A broken-down cabin on some land out in the country. Ethan's eyes lit up. Like a house. A real house that could be ours. It's not that simple, buddy. The cabin is probably falling apart. That's why it's so cheap. And we don't have money for repairs but we could have land, our own land, where nobody could kick us out. Marcus looked at his son's face, at the hope blazing there, like a fire that refused to die. Our own land where nobody could kick us out. The eviction notice behind the couch cushions. 30 days. Let me think about it, Marcus said. It's probably nothing. Probably a scam. But that night after Ethan was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with the mysterious note and his laptop researching. The auction was real. Fauquier County, Virginia, about an hour outside of Arlington. The property listing was exactly as described, 3.2 acres cabin in severe disrepair, no utilities back taxes of $50. The previous owner was listed as Walter Graves, deceased. Marcus searched the name and found almost nothing. A few mentions in old newspaper archives, something about a reclusive scientist who had lived in the area in the 1970s and 1980s. A brief mention of his disappearance in 1989, presumed dead after evidence of an accident was found in the wilderness. No family, no heirs. The property had sat abandoned for 35 years, accumulating back taxes that were so minimal the county had never bothered to seize it, until now. Marcus stared at the listing until the words blurred. $50. That was all it would take to own something, to have a piece of land that belonged to him and Ethan where no landlord could raise the rent or file for eviction. It was crazy. The cabin was probably uninhabitable, the land was probably worthless, the whole thing was probably some kind of scam he couldn't see yet. But, he pulled out his wallet and looked at the bills inside. 2 20s, a 10. In another 30 days he'd be spending this money on food they'd eat in a week, or on gas for a car that was dying anyway. Or on some other temporary expense that would leave them with nothing to show for it. Or he could spend it on land, on ownership, on the chance, however slim, that a broken-down cabin in the Virginia wilderness might become something more. Marcus thought about Elena, about the promise he'd made at her bedside. Take care of our boy. He thought about Ethan drawing houses in his notebook, designing a home he'd never live in. He thought about the eviction notice behind the couch cushions. And he made a decision. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, with clouds that threatened rain and a wind that cut through Marcus's thin jacket. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie that he wore to job interviews, trying to look like someone who belonged at a county auction instead of someone who was about to gamble his last $50 on a dream. You look nice, Dad. Ethan appeared at the doorway, already dressed, his notebook tucked under his arm. Like you're going somewhere important. I am going somewhere important. Marcus turned from the mirror. But you're staying with Mrs. Patterson. Auctions are boring. Lots of standing around. I want to come. Ethan. Please, Dad. The boy's voice was steady, but his eyes were pleading. If we're going to buy a house, I want to be there. I want to see it happen. We're not buying a house. We're buying land with a broken cabin on it. Big difference. But it could be a house someday, right? We could fix it up, make it ours. Marcus sighed. Maybe, if we win the auction, if the property isn't completely worthless, if 100 other things go right, that probably won't. But maybe they will. That hope again blazing in Ethan's eyes. The same hope that had carried them through Elena's funeral, through the months of grief, through the injury and the job loss and the slow descent into poverty. Hope was all they had left. Marcus couldn't bring himself to crush it. Fine, you can come, but you sit quietly and don't make a sound during the bidding. Understood? Understood. Ethan was already grabbing his jacket. I'll be so quiet you won't even know I'm there, like a Secret Service agent on protection detail. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Exactly like that. The drive to Fauquier County took an hour and 15 minutes. The Honda's grinding had gotten worse overnight, a new sound joining the old one, creating a symphony of mechanical failure that made Marcus wince with every mile. Dad, Ethan was watching the road, his notebook open on his lap. Why do you think someone sent you that note about the auction? I don't know. It's weird, right? Like someone wanted to make sure you knew about it. Like they picked you specifically. Marcus had been thinking the same thing, turning it over in his mind, without finding an answer. Maybe it was just advertising. Maybe they sent notes to everyone in the area. Without stamps hand-delivered? Ethan shook his head. That's a lot of work for advertising. And how would they know we needed a cheap house? We don't need a cheap house. We need... Marcus stopped. We need a lot of things, buddy. This probably won't help with any of them. Then why are we going? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Because your mother used to say that the best things in life come from taking chances on something better. Because staying safe hasn't gotten us anywhere good. Because... He trailed off, unable to articulate the feeling that had been building since he first read that mysterious note. Because you feel like you're supposed to, Ethan finished. Like it's meant to happen. Marcus glanced at his son. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're busy being sad and worried. The words were delivered without accusation, a simple statement of fact. Marcus felt them land like gentle blows. I'm sorry, buddy. I know I've been... It's okay, Dad. I understand. Ethan returned to his notebook, sketching something new. But maybe today is the day when things start getting better. Maybe this is the chance we're supposed to take. The courthouse parking lot was fuller than Marcus expected. At least 40 people milled around the entrance, clutching auction sheets and talking in low voices. Some wore expensive suits and carried calculators, clearly professionals who did this regularly. Others looked like Marcus, desperate people hoping for a miracle. Stay close to me, Marcus said as they walked toward the entrance. And remember, quiet. Like a Secret Service agent. Exactly. They found a spot near the back of the crowd. Marcus's knee was already aching from the walk, and he shifted his weight to ease the pressure. Mr. Cole, Marcus turned to find a man in his 60s standing nearby, well-dressed but not flashy, with sharp eyes that seemed to be evaluating him. Do I know you? No. The man smiled pleasantly. But I know you. Former Secret Service correct medical retirement after taking a bullet for Ambassador Petrov. Marcus's hand instinctively moved to a protective position in front of Ethan. Who are you? Just a concerned citizen with an interest in the auction. The man's smile didn't waver. Specifically in Lot 47, I'm curious about who else might be interested in that particular property. I'm just here looking around. Of course. Well, good luck to you, Mr. Cole. I hope you find what you're looking for. The man walked away, disappearing into the crowd with the ease of someone who knew how to move unnoticed. Dad? Ethan's voice was tight. Who was that? I don't know. Marcus was scanning the crowd, now looking for other watchers. Other people who seemed too interested in him. A skill from his Secret Service days that had never quite faded. But I don't like it. Should we leave? Marcus considered it. The encounter had triggered every protective instinct he had. Someone knew about his interest in Lot 47. Someone was watching him. But that also meant that Lot 47 was more interesting than it appeared. Properties worth $50 didn't attract attention from well-dressed men who knew your name and your history. We stay, Marcus said, but we stay alert. You see anything strange, anyone paying too much attention to us, you tell me immediately. Understood? Understood. The auction began at 9 sharp. Carl Hendricks, the auctioneer, had a booming voice that carried across the crowd without a microphone. He rattled through the rules quickly, then started with the first property. Marcus watched and waited, his eyes constantly moving across the crowd. He spotted the well-dressed man twice more, always at the edge of his vision, always watching. The properties sold one by one. Commercial buildings, residential lots, houses with various problems. The prices climbed into the thousands, the tens of thousands, far beyond anything Marcus could afford. But he wasn't here for those properties. Lot 47, Carl Hendricks' voice cut through Marcus's thoughts. Rural property, 3.2 acres with cabin. Back taxes, $50. Minimum bid, $50. A murmur went through the crowd. Marcus heard whispered conversations, people flipping through their auction sheets. This property is located on Pine Ridge Road, approximately 15 miles east of Warrenton. Access via unpaved road in poor condition. Structure described as cabin in severe disrepair. No utilities connected. Previous owner Walter Graves deceased. Property abandoned since 1989. Sold as is. All risks and liabilities to buyer. Marcus felt Ethan press closer to his side. Do I have an opening bid of $50? Marcus raised his hand before he could second-guess himself. 50 from bidder 47. Carl Hendricks nodded. Do I have 75? Silence. Marcus held his breath. 50 once? Movement at the edge of the crowd. The well-dressed man was raising his hand. 75 from the gentleman in back. Do I have 100? Marcus's heart hammered. $75. He didn't have $75, but in his pocket there was the velvet box he'd been carrying for months. Elena's wedding ring. 100, Marcus heard himself say. Ethan gasped beside him. 100 from bidder 47. Do I have 125? The well-dressed man was watching Marcus now evaluating him with those sharp eyes. After a long moment, he shook his head. 100 once, 100 twice. Marcus's hand went to his pocket, closing around the ring box. He'd just bid money he didn't have. If he won, he'd have to pawn Elena's ring to pay for it. Elena's ring, the last physical piece of their marriage. Sold to bidder 47 for $100. The gavel came down. Marcus stood frozen, processing what had just happened. He'd won. He'd purchased a property for money he didn't have, using his dead wife's ring as collateral he hadn't yet pawned. Dad? Ethan was pulling at his sleeve. Dad, we won. We won. I know, buddy, I know. We have a house, we have land, Ethan, quiet. Marcus's eyes were on the well-dressed man who was walking toward the exit with a phone pressed to his ear. We need to handle the paperwork, and then we need to be very careful. Careful why? Because someone wanted that property, because someone had been watching him, because properties worth $50 didn't attract well-dressed men who knew your name and your military history. Because something about this isn't right, Marcus said. And until we know what's going on, we trust no one. Understand? Ethan nodded, his excitement dimming into wariness. I understand, Dad. The paperwork took 2 hours. Marcus found a pawn shop 3 blocks from the courthouse that gave him $380 for Elena's ring, the ring that had cost $1,200 15 years ago. He used $100 for the auction payment and kept the rest for supplies. The moment he handed over the ring, he felt something inside him tear. Elena's face flashed through his mind the day he'd put that ring on her finger, the way she'd cried and laughed at the same time. I'm sorry, he whispered too quietly for even Ethan to hear. I'm so sorry. But he took the money, he signed the papers, and when the county clerk handed him the deed and the keys, he was officially a property owner. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. The clerk, a kind woman named Barbara, smiled as she processed the final forms. You're now the owner of 2 acres and whatever's left of that cabin. Can you tell me anything about the previous owner, Walter Graves? Barbara's smile flickered. Not much. He was a bit of a recluse from what I heard. Lived out there alone for years. Some kind of scientist or engineer. Disappeared back in '89. They found evidence of an accident in the woods, but never a body. Disappeared. Just vanished. Left everything behind. Folks assumed he wandered off and got lost or fell into a ravine. It happens out there. Barbara lowered her voice. Truth is, people around here were a little relieved when he was gone. He was odd. Kept to himself. Had government types coming around, sometimes asking questions. Made people nervous. Government types. The well-dressed man's face flashed through Marcus's mind. What kind of questions? I wouldn't know. That was before my time. But if you're out there and you find anything strange, anything that looks official or important... Barbara hesitated. Barbara. Maybe be careful who you tell about it. Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate the advice. The drive to the property took another 30 minutes, most of it on roads that progressively worsened until they were barely roads at all. Pine Ridge Road started as cracked asphalt became gravel and finally devolved into 2 tire tracks separated by weeds. The Honda scraped and bounced over every obstacle, the grinding sounds reaching a crescendo that made Marcus certain the car would die at any moment. This is amazing, Ethan said, gripping the door handle as they navigated around a fallen branch. It's like we're explorers going somewhere no one's been in years. No one has been here in years. That's part of the problem. Or part of the adventure. Despite everything, Marcus smiled. His son's optimism was relentless, almost aggressive. It refused to acknowledge the reality of their situation, or maybe it saw a different reality, one where broken things could be fixed and abandoned places could become homes. The trees opened into a clearing, and Marcus stopped the car. The cabin stood in the center of the clearing like a forgotten memory. It was larger than he'd expected, maybe 24 feet wide and 30 feet deep, constructed of logs that had weathered to silver gray beneath decades of neglect. Vines covered nearly every surface, transforming the structure into a living green mound. The front porch sagged dramatically on the left side. Several windows were broken. The roof was missing shingles and patches, dark gaps that promised leaks and water damage within. It was a disaster. A complete, unmitigated disaster. "It's perfect," Ethan whispered. Marcus turned to his son. "You're looking at the same cabin I'm looking at, right? The one that's falling apart." "I'm looking at our home." Ethan opened his door and stepped out, his eyes never leaving the cabin. "I'm looking at the house I've been drawing for months. It's here, Dad. It's real." Marcus followed his son across the overgrown clearing, testing the ground with each step. The grass was thick and tangled, hiding rocks and roots that could turn an ankle. "Be careful," he called. "We don't know what's out here." But Ethan was already at the porch steps, examining the structure with an intensity that reminded Marcus of himself during a security assessment. "The logs are solid," Ethan said. "See how tight the grain is. Someone treated this wood with something. It's weathered, but it's not rotted." Marcus climbed the porch steps, carefully testing each board. His son was right. Despite the sagging corner, the floor felt sound. The construction beneath the damage was surprisingly solid. The larger of the two keys fit the front door lock. Marcus was surprised when it turned smoothly, as if the mechanism had been maintained, even while everything else fell apart. The door swung open with a groan of protest. Inside, afternoon light filtered through vine-covered windows, casting green shadows across a main room that was bigger than their entire apartment. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. Built-in shelves flanked it on both sides. The floor was hardwood beneath layers of dust and debris. "Look at this place," Ethan breathed. "Look at how it was built. Mr. Graves knew what he was doing." Marcus moved through the space slowly, his trained eyes cataloging details. The craftsmanship was exceptional, far beyond what he'd expected from an abandoned cabin. The log joints were precisely fitted. The windows were positioned to maximize light while maintaining privacy. The built-ins were the work of someone who understood both form and function. This wasn't a weekend retreat thrown together by amateurs. This was the careful work of someone with skills and resources and time. "Dad, look." Ethan had moved to the fireplace and was kneeling beside the built-in shelves. "Some of these boards are loose, like really loose." Marcus joined his son. Several of the shelf boards could be lifted out entirely, revealing gaps in the construction that seemed intentional. "It's like hidden compartments," Ethan said, his voice excited. "Like Mr. Graves was hiding something." Marcus removed one of the boards carefully. Beneath it, in a shallow cavity, were several sheets of yellowed paper. His heart began to beat faster. He extracted the papers and held them up to the light. They were covered in handwriting neat and precise, despite faded blue ink. Journal entries dated from the late 1980s. "What do they say?" Ethan pressed close. Marcus began to read aloud. "March 15, 1987. The work is nearly complete. 30 years of research, and I believe I have finally solved the fundamental problems that have plagued the field since Tesla's early experiments. The applications are extraordinary, but I fear the implications if this knowledge falls into the wrong hands." Tesla. Ethan's eyes were wide. "Like Nikola Tesla, the electricity guy?" "The same." Marcus turned to the next page. April 3rd, 1987. The government men came again today. They are persistent, these people who want to classify my work to lock it away in some vault where it will benefit no one. They offer contracts and threats in equal measure. I have told them nothing, but I know they will not give up easily. Government men. The well-dressed stranger at the auction. The people Barbara had mentioned asking questions. "Dad?" Ethan's voice had dropped to a whisper. "Mr. Graves was hiding from the government. That's why he lived out here alone. That's why he built secret compartments." Marcus kept reading, his mind racing. June 17, 1987. I have begun hiding my work in locations around the property. If they come for me, they will not find everything. The technology is too important to destroy, but too dangerous to leave accessible. I must trust, with Trvana Sutrust, that the right person will eventually come. The right person, the anonymous note, the auction, the property that cost exactly $50, exactly what Marcus had in his wallet. Someone had wanted him to find this place. Someone had chosen him. "There's more to," Ethan said, reaching into the compartment. "There's another paper." He pulled out a folded sheet that had been wedged into the back of the cavity. The paper was newer than the journal entries, less yellowed, as if it had been placed there more recently. Marcus unfolded it with hands that trembled slightly. The message was typed like the note that had appeared in his mailbox. "Mr. Cole, if you are reading this, you have done exactly what I hoped you would do. You have taken a chance on something broken because you understood it could become something more. Walter Graves is not dead. He has been watching. He has been waiting, and he believes you are the right person to inherit his life's work. What is hidden on this property could change the world. It could also make you a target for people who will stop at nothing to possess it. Continue searching, trust your instincts, and when the time is right, he will find you. Your son has his mother's eyes. Protect him well. Marcus read the message 3 times. His hands were shaking now, no longer slightly. Walter Graves is not dead. He has been watching. Your son has his mother's eyes. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew about Ethan. Someone had orchestrated everything from the anonymous note to the auction to this moment at standing in an abandoned cabin with a message that promised both treasure and danger. Dad, Ethan's voice was small, scared. What does it mean? Marcus folded the message and put it in his pocket. His Secret Service training was kicking in, overriding the fear with cold, clear analysis. Threat assessment, resource evaluation, protection protocols. It means we need to be very careful, he said. It means we found something important, and it means that somewhere out there someone is watching to see what we do next. Is that good or bad? Marcus looked at his son, at Elena's eyes filled with fear and hope and trust. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but we're going to find out. He pulled Ethan close, one arm wrapped protectively around the boy's shoulders. Outside, the afternoon light was fading. The shadows were growing longer. And somewhere in those shadows, Marcus could feel eyes watching, waiting, evaluating. The game had begun. And Marcus Cole had no idea what the rules were. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table in their Arlington apartment, the mysterious message spread out before him, reading the words over and over until they burned into his memory. Walter Graves is not dead. He has been watching. Your son has his mother's eyes. Protect him well. Every instinct he had developed over 15 years of protection work screamed that they should walk away, sell the property, forget about the hidden compartments, and the cryptic messages return to their simple struggle of survival. But simple survival was killing them. The eviction notice behind the couch cushions proved that. In 30 days, they would be homeless anyway. What did they have to lose by pursuing this mystery? Everything, a voice whispered. You have Ethan to lose. At 3 a.m, Marcus made a decision. They would return to the cabin tomorrow. They would search carefully, methodically, using all the skills he had developed in his years of service. And they would be prepared for whatever they found. He finally dozed off around 4, slumped over the kitchen table with his hand resting on his phone. The nightmare came as it always did. Elena in the hospital bed, her skin gray, her breath rattling. Her hand gripping his with surprising strength for someone so close to death. Promise me, Marcus. Promise me you'll take care of our boy. I promise. He's special. He sees things others miss. Protect him. Guide him. Help him become who he's meant to be. I will. I swear I will. And Marcus. Yes? Trust yourself. You've always known the right thing to do. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Trust yourself. Marcus woke to Ethan shaking his shoulder. Dad, wake up. It's almost 9. He jerked upright, disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. He had slept for 5 hours longer than he'd intended. I made coffee, Ethan said, and toast. I know it's not much, but it's perfect, buddy. Marcus pulled his son into a hug. Thank you. Are we going back to the cabin today? Marcus hesitated. Part of him wanted to keep Ethan away from whatever dangers waited at that property, but another part remembered what Elena had said in his dream. He's special. He sees things others miss. Ethan had already proven that. His observation skills had helped them find the hidden compartment. His optimism had pushed Marcus to bid at the auction. Without Ethan, none of this would be happening. Yes, Marcus said, we're going back, but we need to talk first about what we might be getting into. He explained everything. The government men mentioned in the journal, the well-dressed stranger at the auction, the warning in the message about becoming targets. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to protect Ethan from the truth. When he finished, Ethan was quiet for a long moment. So Mr. Graves invented something important, the boy said finally, and the government wanted to take it, and he hid it instead of letting them have it, and now he thinks we're the right people to find it. That's what the message suggests. Why us? I don't know. Ethan considered this. Maybe because you're a good person. You took a bullet for someone you didn't even like. That's what the message said, right? Maybe Mr. Graves has been watching people who buy his property, waiting for someone who would do the right thing with whatever he invented. Marcus stared at his son. That's actually a pretty good theory. I have lots of theories. Ethan grinned. I've been thinking about it all night. I couldn't sleep either. You should have slept. Couldn't. Too excited, too scared, too everything. The grin faded. Dad, I know this might be dangerous, but I also know we don't have anywhere else to go. If we don't figure this out, we're going to be homeless in a month anyway. At least this way we have a chance. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and grief simultaneously. His 10-year-old son shouldn't have to think about homelessness, shouldn't have to weigh danger against desperation. But here they were. Okay, Marcus said. We go back, we search carefully, and the moment anything feels wrong, we leave. No arguments. Deal. Deal. They loaded the car with supplies purchased from a dollar store. Flashlights, work gloves, a first aid kit, bottles of water, granola bars. Basic equipment for exploring an abandoned property. The drive to Fauquier County felt shorter this time, or maybe Marcus was just more focused. His eyes constantly checked the mirrors, watching for anyone who might be following them. That car's been behind us for 10 minutes, Ethan said quietly. The gray sedan. Marcus had noticed. Could be coincidence, same route. Could be. But when Marcus turned onto Pine Ridge Road, the gray sedan kept going on the main highway. He allowed himself a small breath of relief. Nice catch, he told Ethan. Keep watching. The cabin looked different in morning light. Less ominous, more sad. A structure that had once been someone's home, now slowly surrendering to time and neglect. They approached carefully, Marcus scanning the clearing for any sign of visitors since yesterday. The grass showed only their own footprints from the day before. Let's start inside, he said. We found papers in the fireplace shelves. There might be more hidden compartments elsewhere. They worked systematically room by room. Marcus tested every floorboard, every panel, every piece of built-in furniture. Ethan proved invaluable, his sharp eyes catching details that Marcus missed. This drawer bottom sounds different, Ethan said from the back bedroom. Listen. He knocked on the drawer bottom, then on the one beside it. The sounds were subtly different, one more hollow than the other. Marcus used his pocket knife to pry up the bottom panel. Beneath it lay more papers, these ones technical drawings, that meant nothing to him. Complex diagrams with labels like resonance chamber and field harmonics. Mr. Graves was definitely some kind of scientist, Ethan said, studying the drawings. This looks like electrical stuff, but way more complicated than anything I've seen in books. They found 3 more hidden caches that morning, behind a loose board in the bedroom wall, inside a hollowed-out section of the window seat beneath a false bottom in a cabinet. Each cache contained similar materials, technical drawings, journal entries, and occasional small components that looked like precision-machined parts. By noon, they had accumulated a pile of documents that would take days to fully examine. Dad, I'm hungry, huh? Ethan said. Can we take a break? They sat on the front porch eating granola bars and drinking warm water. The October sun felt good after hours of dusty work. There's something I don't understand, Ethan said between bites. If Mr. Graves is alive, like the message says, why doesn't he just come talk to us? Why all the hidden clues and mysterious notes? Maybe he's being careful, watching to see if we can be trusted. How do we prove we can be trusted? I think that's what we're doing right now, finding his work, protecting it instead of selling it or calling the authorities. Ethan nodded slowly. Like a test. Exactly like a test. Then let's pass it. They returned to their search. Marcus moved to the small outbuilding behind the cabin, what appeared to be an old tool shed. The door was warped and difficult to open, but eventually yielded to his shoulder. Inside the shed was cluttered with rusted gardening equipment and old hand tools. Nothing obviously valuable or interesting, but Ethan, standing in the doorway, tilted his head. This doesn't feel right, he said. What do you mean? The size. Look at the outside walls. He walked around the shed, counting his steps. 15 feet long. But inside, it's only 10 feet. Where's the other 5 feet? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His son had noticed what he had missed. The interior dimensions didn't match the exterior. They searched the back wall of the shed, carefully looking for seams, for hidden catches, for anything that might indicate a false wall. Ethan found a small metal switch disguised as a nail head tucked beneath one of the shelves. Should I press it? Marcus positioned himself between Ethan and the wall. Let me. Stay back. He pressed the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the floor in the back corner began to descend, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. Holy, Ethan caught himself. Dad, it's a secret basement. A secret underground basement. Marcus stared at the staircase, his heart pounding. This was bigger than hidden compartments. This was something else entirely. "Wait here," he said. "No way." "Ethan." "No way, Dad. We're a team. Where you go, I go." Marcus looked at his son's determined face and knew argument was futile. "Fine, but stay behind me, and if I say run, you run. No arguments." "No arguments." They descended the stairs slowly. Marcus's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing concrete walls that gave way to a much larger space below. When they reached the bottom, the lights came on automatically. Marcus stopped breathing. They were standing in a laboratory, a massive underground laboratory that had to be 3 times the size of the cabin above. Workbenches lined the walls covered with precision instruments and monitoring equipment. Banks of lights hummed overhead, powered by sources that were nowhere visible. And filling the central space were machines. Machines unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Complex assemblies of metal and wire and components that defied easy description. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "this is what he was hiding. This is what the government wanted." Marcus moved through the laboratory slowly, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The largest device dominated the far end of the space, a circular platform about 10 feet in diameter, surrounded by rings of metal components that seemed to shimmer slightly. Control panels flanked the platform, covered with switches and gauges and rapid readouts that scrolled with continuous data. "It's still running," Marcus said, disbelief in his voice. "After 35 years, it's still running." "Running on what?" "I don't know. I don't see any power lines, no generators, no fuel tanks." He moved closer to the control panel, reading the labels. Harmonic frequency, field strength, energy output. Energy output. Ethan was beside him now, studying the panel. "Dad, look at these numbers. If I'm reading this right, this thing is generating electricity, a lot of electricity, from nothing." "That's impossible. So is an underground lab that's been running for 35 years with no one to maintain it." Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. Everything about this defied explanation, and yet here it was humming quietly, waiting to be discovered. "We should photograph everything," he said. "Document what we're finding before we touch anything." They spent the next hour taking pictures with Marcus's phone capturing every detail of the laboratory. Ethan proved invaluable again, noticing connections and patterns that Marcus missed, suggesting angles and perspectives that would be useful for later analysis. When they reached the back of the laboratory, they found something unexpected. A doorway led to a smaller space, what appeared to be living quarters. A bed, a small kitchen, a bathroom, a desk covered with papers, and on the desk, sitting as if placed there moments ago, was a coffee cup with steam rising from it. Marcus's hand went to the knife in his pocket. Someone was here. Someone was in this building with them. "Dad?" Ethan whispered, pointing. A man stood in the shadows near the back wall, tall and thin, elderly, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Hello, Mr. Cole," the man said. "I've been waiting for you. Please don't be alarmed. My name is Walter Graves, and I believe we have much to discuss." Marcus pushed Ethan behind him, his body shifting into a protective stance that was pure instinct. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yes, that was the intention." Graves stepped forward into the light, his movements slow and deliberate. "Dead men don't have to answer questions. Dead men can watch and wait without being disturbed." "You've been watching us." "Since you bought the property, yes, but in truth I've been watching you for longer than that, since before the auction, since before the note I left in your mailbox." "Why me?" Graves smiled slightly. "Because I've spent 35 years looking for the right person, Mr. Cole. Someone with integrity, someone with skills, someone who would protect what I've created instead of exploiting it. When I learned about your situation, your background, your character, I knew I had found him." "How did you learn about me?" "I have resources, limited but effective. I knew about your service record, your injury, your devotion to your son, your financial difficulties." Graves paused. "I knew you were desperate enough to take a chance on a broken-down cabin, and I believed you were honest enough to handle what you found there." Marcus's mind was racing. "The auction, you arranged it. The timing, the minimum bid, all of it." "I've been paying the back taxes on this property for decades, keeping the amount low enough that no one would bother to seize it. When I decided the time was right, I simply stopped paying. The county scheduled an auction, and I made sure you knew about it." "The message in my mailbox. Delivered by a friend who owes me favors." Graves moved to one of the workbenches, his hand resting on a piece of equipment. "Everything I've done has been to bring you here, Mr. Cole, to this moment, to this choice." "What choice?" Graves turned to face him fully. "The choice to inherit my life's work, to become the guardian of technology that could change the world, or to walk away and pretend none of this ever happened." Ethan stepped out from behind his father. "What kind of technology? What do these machines do?" Graves looked at the boy with something like affection. "They generate energy, young man. Clean, unlimited energy from the fabric of space-time itself. No fuel, no pollution, no cost once the systems are built. The power to light cities, to purify water, to grow food, to transform the lives of billions of people who currently live in energy poverty." "That sounds good," Ethan said cautiously. "So why did you have to hide it?" "Because it can also be weaponized." Graves' expression darkened. "The same principles that generate electricity can be modified to generate destructive force. The government understood that potential immediately. They wanted to classify my work to develop it in secret for military applications. I refused. And they threatened you." "They did more than threaten." Graves pushed up his sleeve, revealing a scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. "When polite requests failed, they sent less polite people. I barely escaped with my life. That's when I decided to disappear." Marcus was studying the old man, evaluating him the way he would evaluate anyone who claimed to be something unusual. The scar was real. The laboratory was real. The machines humming around them were real. But trust had to be earned. "Prove it," Marcus said. "Prove the technology works." Graves smiled. "I was hoping you would ask." "Wtycz." He moved to a smaller device on one of the workbenches, a unit about the size of a microwave oven. With practiced movements, he activated several switches. The device hummed to life. A soft glow emanated from within. "This unit can power a house indefinitely," Graves said. "No external connections, no fuel, just clean continuous electricity for as long as the components last, which is approximately 100 years before maintenance is required." "That's impossible," Marcus said, but even as he spoke, he watched the monitoring equipment register output levels that would power his apartment 10 times over. "Impossibility is merely a failure of imagination." Graves shut down the device. "I have spent my life proving impossible things possible. This laboratory contains working prototypes of technology that could solve humanity's energy crisis within a decade, but only if it reaches the right hands. And you think those hands are mine? I know they are." "Shh." Graves' eyes met Marcus's. "You spent 15 years protecting others. You took a bullet for someone you didn't even respect because it was your duty. You've endured poverty and grief without compromising your integrity. You're raising a son who sees the world clearly and asks the right questions." He glanced at Ethan. "These are not small things, Mr. Cole. These are the qualities of a guardian." Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This wasn't just about a cabin or a property. This was about something that could change the world. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Graves took a deep breath. "I'm asking you to inherit everything. The technology, the patents, the documentation, and a foundation fund of approximately $10 million that I've accumulated over the past 3 decades. In return, you would become the guardian of my work. You would protect it from those who would misuse it. And when the time is right, you would share it with the world in ways that maximize benefit while minimizing harm." $10 million. The number hung in the air between them. "You're serious," Marcus said. "I'm 82 years old, Mr. Cole. I've spent 35 years hiding, watching, waiting. I don't have time left for games." Graves' voice was tired but determined. "The people who pursued me in 1987 have not forgotten. They've been watching this property all along, waiting to see if anyone would find what I hid. They saw you at the auction. They know you bought the land. They will come." "The man in the suit." "One of many. The agencies that want my work have resources and patience. They will investigate you, follow you, pressure you, and if they believe you have found my laboratory, they will move to acquire it by any means necessary." "Then why choose me? Why put me and my son at risk?" Graves was silent for a moment. "Because you are already at risk, Mr. Cole. You face eviction in 30 days. Your car is failing. Your options are running out. The life you have been living is ending regardless of what you choose here today." He stepped closer, his eyes intense. "I am offering you a different ending. A chance to protect something that matters, a purpose that extends beyond simple survival, and yes, resources that would solve your immediate problems many times over." Marcus looked at his son. Ethan was watching him with those brown eyes that held so much of Elena. "What do you think, buddy?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I think Mom would want us to help people. I think that's what she would say if she were here. She would say that we should leave the world better than we found it. She would say that we should help people when we can, even when it's hard. Marcus heard his son's voice echoing with Elena's words, and he knew his decision had already been made. He turned back to Graves. What do we do first? The next 3 hours were a blur of information and overwhelm. Graves walked them through the laboratory, explaining each device, each system, each innovation. The technology was revolutionary, far beyond anything Marcus had encountered in his government career. But the most important revelations came when Graves opened a safe in his living quarters and withdrew a leather folder thick with documents. These are the legal instruments, he said. Patent assignments, foundation bylaws, financial authorizations. Everything needed to transfer my life's work to you legally and completely. Marcus flipped through the documents, recognizing the formal language of contracts and trusts. This is real. Prepared by attorneys I trust, updated regularly over the years. All that's required is your signature and proper witnessing. Why not just release the technology yourself? Go public, share it with everyone. Because sudden release would cause chaos. Graves sat heavily in a chair, his age showing. The economic disruption alone would be catastrophic. Energy companies worth trillions of dollars would become worthless overnight. Millions of jobs would disappear. Wars might be fought over access to the technology or the right to suppress it. So what's the alternative? Gradual introduction. Start with communities that need energy most and can benefit without attracting attention. Prove the technology works at scale. Build relationships and resources. Create a movement that becomes too large to stop. Graves leaned forward. It requires patience. It requires strategy. It requires someone who understands how to navigate dangerous situations while achieving objectives. You're describing my job, my old job. I'm describing your new job, if you accept it. Marcus looked at Ethan, who had been listening intently to everything. There's something else you should know, Graves said. The man you saw at the auction works for an agency that has been monitoring this property for years. They will investigate your purchase. They will search for evidence that you found my laboratory, and they will not give up easily. You're saying we'll have to hide this, pretend we're just renovating a cabin. For now, yes, the foundation structure provides legal protection, but legal protection means nothing against agencies that operate outside normal channels. Graves's expression was grave. You would need to be very careful, especially regarding your son. Marcus felt a chill. What do you mean? The people who pursued me used everyone close to me as leverage. Colleagues, friends, family. They will do the same to you if they believe it will get them what they want. And you still think I should do this? I think you're the only one who can. Graves reached out and gripped Marcus's arm with surprising strength. I've watched dozens of people buy this property over the years. Weekend visitors, hunters, investors looking for cheap land. None of them found the hidden caches. None of them had the training or the instinct to look beyond the obvious. Then why did I find them? Because you were trained to find things. Because your son was taught to observe. And because... Graves hesitated. Because I helped. Small adjustments to make the caches slightly more accessible. Subtle arrangements that would catch the eye of someone who knew how to look. You rigged the discovery. I facilitated it. There's a difference. Graves released his arm. You still had to see. You still had to act. I simply made sure you had the opportunity. Marcus processed this information. He had been manipulated, guided, directed toward discoveries he thought were his own. Part of him resented it, but another part understood. Graves had spent 35 years searching for the right guardian. Of course, he would do everything possible to ensure success once he found a candidate. I need to think, Marcus said. This is too big to decide right now. Take your time, but not too much time. Graves glanced toward the stairway leading up to the shed. The gray sedan that followed you this morning, it will return. They will watch more closely now. Every day that passes increases the risk. How do you know about the gray sedan? Graves smiled slightly. I have cameras, motion sensors, an early warning system that has kept me safe for 3 decades. I saw you coming before you reached the main road. Of course, a paranoid genius hiding from government agencies would have surveillance systems. One more question, Marcus said. The message you left the one in the cabin, it mentioned my son having his mother's eyes. How did you know that? I told you, I've been watching for a long time. Graves's expression softened. I knew about Elena, about her illness. I even knew about her last words to you. Marcus felt his blood run cold. How? I have a friend. Someone who worked at the hospital where she died. Someone who heard what she said and told me later. Graves held up his hand as Marcus tensed. Not a spy, Mr. Cole. A nurse who knew I was looking for someone special. Someone who understood sacrifice and love and the desperate lengths we go to protect those we care about. Elena had been a nurse. She had worked with other nurses. And somewhere in that network, Graves had found information that led him to Marcus. It was invasive. It was disturbing. It was also, Marcus realized, exactly what he would have done in Graves's position. We'll return tomorrow, Marcus said. I need tonight to think, to talk with Ethan, to decide if this is really what we want. Graves nodded. I understand. I'll be here. I've been here for 35 years. One more night won't matter. They climbed the stairs in silence. The shed floor rose back into place behind them, hiding the laboratory once more. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the clearing. The drive home was quiet. Ethan fell asleep halfway there, exhausted by the day's revelations. Marcus drove on autopilot, his mind churning through possibilities and dangers. $10 million. Revolutionary technology, government agencies watching, a life completely different from anything he had imagined. When they reached the apartment, Marcus carried Ethan to bed and stood watching him sleep for a long moment. His son, his responsibility, his reason for everything. What should I do, Elena? He whispered. What would you tell me? The answer came immediately clear, as if she had spoken aloud in the room. You already know. You've always known. Trust yourself. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out his phone, and began making a list. Things needed for cabin renovation. Things needed to protect Ethan. Things needed to change the world. The list grew longer as the night wore on. By morning, Marcus Cole had made his decision. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus signed the papers transferring Walter Graves's legacy into his hands. 3 weeks of secret renovation work, careful planning, and constant vigilance. 3 weeks that had transformed their lives in ways Marcus was still struggling to comprehend. The legal transfer happened in a cramped attorney's office in Richmond, witnessed by Margaret Chen, a woman who had been managing Graves's affairs secretly for 20 years. She explained every document, every implication, every responsibility. When Marcus walked out of that office, he was no longer a broke ex-Secret Service agent facing eviction. He was the legal guardian of technology worth billions and the trustee of a foundation with $10 million designated for humanitarian purposes. But the money felt abstract, unreal. What felt real was the work. Every winter weekend, Marcus and Ethan drove to the cabin and continued the renovation that served as their cover story. They cleared vines, repaired the roof, replaced broken windows. To any observer, they were simply a father and son fixing up a rundown property. But in the hidden laboratory beneath the shed, the real work happened. Graves had become their teacher, spending hours each day explaining the principles behind his inventions. Ethan absorbed the information like a sponge, his natural curiosity finding purchase in concepts that made Marcus's head spin. The key is resonance, Graves explained during one session, pointing to diagrams that covered the laboratory walls. Every system in the universe vibrates at specific frequencies. My devices tap into those frequencies, amplifying small fluctuations into usable energy. Like pushing a swing, Ethan said. If you push at the right time, a little push makes a big swing. Graves smiled. Exactly like that. You understand intuitively what took me decades to prove mathematically. Marcus watched his son and the old scientist working together and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but genuine hope for a future worth building. But the watchers were never far from his mind. The gray sedan had returned 3 times in the first 2 weeks, parking on the main road, to where it could observe anyone approaching the property. Marcus photographed it each time, documenting the surveillance, but never confronting the occupants. Let them watch, Graves advised. They see a cabin being renovated, nothing more. As long as we maintain that illusion, they have no justification for action. And if they decide to act anyway, then we have contingencies. Graves's eyes hardened. I've spent 35 years preparing for that possibility. The first test of those contingencies came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was at the apartment reviewing foundation documents when his phone buzzed with an alert from the security system Graves had helped him install at the cabin. Motion detected. Multiple figures. Approaching main structure. He pulled up the camera feed and felt his blood freeze. 3 men in tactical gear were moving through the clearing toward the cabin. Not the suited surveillance types he'd seen before. These were operators. Professional, armed, and clearly there for more than observation. Marcus grabbed his phone and called Graves on the encrypted line they had established. I see them, Graves said before Marcus could speak. Stay where you are. Do not come here. What are they doing? Searching the cabin, looking for what we've hidden. There was a pause. They won't find the laboratory. The entrance is sealed and the sensors would detect any attempt to breach it. But they're on my property. They're breaking into my home. Which gives you options. Legal options. But only if you respond appropriately. Graves's voice was calm, tactical. Call the sheriff. Report a break-in. Let the system work. Marcus made the call reporting armed intruders at his property. The dispatcher promised units would respond immediately. For the next 40 minutes, he watched through the cameras as the men searched the cabin systematically. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Everything of value was hidden underground, behind doors they didn't know existed. When the sheriff's deputies arrived, the intruders melted into the forest before contact could be made. The deputies searched the property, found evidence of forced entry, and filed a report that Marcus knew would go nowhere. But that wasn't the point. The point was documentation, evidence, a paper trail that could be used later if needed. They'll be more careful now, Graves said when Marcus reported the outcome. They know you're watching. They know you called authorities. It raises the stakes for any future action. It also tells them I'm hiding something worth protecting. Perhaps, but protection is normal behavior when your home is invaded. They can't prove anything from it. Graves paused. How is Ethan handling this? Marcus looked at his son, who was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework as if nothing had happened, but his pencil wasn't moving and his eyes kept drifting to the phone where Marcus had watched the invasion unfold. He's scared, but he won't admit it. He's brave, like his father. Bravery doesn't protect against men with guns. No, but planning does, preparation does, and we have both. That night, Marcus sat Ethan down for a serious conversation. You saw what happened today. I saw. Ethan's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched. They were looking for Mr. Graves's stuff. They were, and they'll keep looking. Are we going to be okay? Marcus took his son's hands, feeling how small they were, how fragile. I'm going to do everything possible to make sure we are, but I need you to understand that this might get harder before it gets easier. I understand. Do you want to stop? We could sell the property, walk away, pretend none of this happened. Ethan's eyes met his. Would that make them leave us alone? Probably not. They'd always wonder what we found, what we might know. Then what's the point of stopping? Ethan's jaw set with determination that reminded Marcus painfully of Elena. We started this. We should finish it. Even if it's dangerous. Mom would say that some things are worth being scared for. Ethan squeezed his father's hands. This is one of those things. Marcus pulled his son into a hug and held him tight, this child who had inherited his mother's courage and his father's stubbornness. Okay, he whispered. We finish it together. The following weeks established a new rhythm. Marcus accelerated the renovation work, making the cabin habitable for extended stays. Graves helped design security upgrades that transformed the property into a fortress disguised as a humble rural home. Motion sensors, cameras, reinforced doors, escape routes through the forest that Ethan memorized during their weekend visits. Every precaution that Marcus's training could devise implemented with Graves's technical expertise. They also began the real work of the foundation. Graves had identified a community in rural Montana, a small town of 300 people whose aging power grid had failed the previous winter. Families had gone months without reliable electricity, struggling through cold nights and spoiled food. This is where we start, Graves said, showing Marcus the community's profile. Small enough to avoid attention. Desperate enough to accept help without asking too many questions. Perfect for our first deployment. Shame. How do we approach them? Carefully. Through intermediaries who can't be traced back to us. We offer a pilot program, a new energy technology being tested. They get free power. We get proof that the systems work at scale. The logistics took another month to arrange. Shell Company's nonprofit fronts layers of legal protection that Margaret Chen helped construct. By the time they were ready to ship the first units, the trail was so obscured that even Marcus had trouble following it. You've done this before, he said to Graves one evening in the laboratory. Set up systems like this. I've been preparing for this moment for 35 years. Graves looked tired but satisfied. Every contingency, every backup plan, every legal structure, all waiting for someone to activate them. Why didn't you do it yourself? Why wait for someone else? Graves was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm a scientist, not a leader. I can build the technology, but I can't build the movement needed to share it with the world. That requires different skills. Your skills. I was a bodyguard. I protected people by standing between them and danger. I don't know anything about changing the world. You know how to protect what matters. You know how to plan to prepare to anticipate threats. And most importantly, you know how to inspire trust. Graves gestured toward the laboratory around them. All of this means nothing without someone who can convince others to believe in it. That's what you bring. The Montana deployment happened in February, 4 months after Marcus bought the cabin. He didn't go himself, that would be too risky. Instead, a team of technicians Graves had vetted over the years handled the installation, presenting themselves as representatives of a renewable energy nonprofit. The community accepted them cautiously but gratefully. Within a week, 18 homes had power again. Clean, reliable, unlimited power from devices the size of small refrigerators that hummed quietly in basements and garages. When Marcus received the report, he sat in the laboratory and stared at the numbers without speaking. "It works," Ethan said, reading over his shoulder. "It actually works." "Of course it works," Graves said. "I've had 35 years to perfect it." "But seeing it?" Marcus shook his head. "Knowing that right now, families have heat and light because of what we did." "This is why I needed you," Graves said softly. "Because you understand what it means. Because it's not abstract to you. Those aren't numbers on a page. They're people, families, children. There are so many more, so many communities that need this. And we'll reach them, carefully, systematically building momentum that can't be stopped." Graves placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "But first, we have a more immediate problem." The immediate problem became clear the next morning. Marcus arrived at this cabin to find the gray sedan parked directly at the end of their driveway. Not hidden, not watching from a distance. Parked openly, deliberately blocking the exit. As he stepped out of the Honda, a man emerged from the sedan. The same well-dressed man from the auction, still sharp-eyed, still evaluating. "Mr. Cole, I think it's time we had a conversation." Marcus positioned himself between the man and the car where Ethan waited. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "My name is Harrison, Director Harrison, if you prefer formality." The man smiled without warmth. "I represent interests that have been watching this property for quite some time." "You mean surveilling it, illegally?" "I mean protecting national security." Harrison's smile didn't waver. Walter Graves was a brilliant scientist who developed technology with significant military applications. When he disappeared, that technology disappeared with him. We've been waiting 35 years to recover it. And you think I have it? I think you've been spending a great deal of time in that cabin for someone who's supposedly just renovating. I think you've made trips to Richmond for legal consultations that seem unusual for a man in your financial position. And I think the energy readings we've detected from this property are inconsistent with normal residential use. Energy readings. They had equipment that could detect the laboratory's power output. Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." Harrison stepped closer. "Let me be direct, Mr. Cole. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way involves you cooperating, sharing what you found. Accepting appropriate compensation for your assistance. And the hard way involves legal complications that could make your life very difficult. Questions about your property acquisition. Investigations into your financial activities. Concerns about your fitness as a parent." The threat against Ethan hit Marcus like a physical blow, his hands clenched. "Are you threatening my son? I'm describing potential consequences of non-cooperation." Harrison's smile finally faded. "I'm not a monster, Mr. Cole. I'm a practical man pursuing legitimate national security objectives. Help me, and you'll find me generous. Oppose me, and you'll find me relentless." Marcus forced himself to breathe, to think, to respond tactically rather than emotionally. "I need time to consider your offer." "You have 48 hours. Harrison reached into his jacket and produced a card. "Call this number when you're ready to discuss terms." He returned to the sedan and drove away, leaving Marcus standing in the driveway with a racing heart and a fury he could barely contain. Inside the cabin, Graves had been watching through the cameras. "They're escalating," the old man said. "Harrison doesn't make direct contact unless he's confident of success. He threatened Ethan. He said they'd investigate my fitness as a parent. Standard pressure tactics. They're trying to frighten you into compliance." "It's working," Marcus's voice cracked. "I can handle danger to myself, but Ethan is exactly why we prepared contingencies." Graves moved to a wall safe Marcus hadn't noticed before. "Harrison thinks he holds all the cards. He's wrong." From the safe, Graves withdrew a folder thick with documents. What is this written insurance? 35 years of documentation on every illegal operation Harrison and his predecessors have conducted. Surveillance without warrants, property seizures without due process, intimidation of civilians, even a few disappearances that were never explained. Graves handed Marcus the folder. If anything happens to you or Ethan, this goes to every major news organization in the country simultaneously. So, Marcus flipped through the pages. The evidence was detailed, damning career ending for everyone involved. How did you get this? I wasn't just hiding all these years. I was gathering information, building leverage, making sure that if they ever found me, the cost of action would be too high. Graves's eyes were hard. Harrison knows this file exists. He doesn't know where it is or who controls it. That's why he's approaching you with offers instead of force. But he threatened Ethan. Empty threats. Harrison is ambitious, but he's not stupid. Attacking the son of a decorated veteran with documented connections to classified government programs would create exactly the kind of attention he wants to avoid. Graves paused. The real question is what you do next. Marcus stared at the folder at the evidence of decades of government overreach at the weight of leverage he now held. I call his bluff, he said slowly. I meet with him, but on my terms. I make it clear that any action against my family triggers consequences he can't control. That's a dangerous game. It's the only game. Marcus looked at Graves. Unless you have another suggestion. Graves was quiet for a long moment. There is one other option, but it requires accepting that the situation has changed, that careful, gradual deployment is no longer possible. What do you mean? I mean going public, releasing the technology openly, all of it to everyone. Once the knowledge is out there, there's nothing to seize, nothing to suppress. The genie cannot be put back in the bottle. But you said sudden release would cause chaos. It would. Economic disruption, political instability, possible violence as interests fight to control or destroy what they can't possess. Graves's expression was grave. But it would also protect you and Ethan. Once the secret is no longer a secret, you're no longer valuable as a target. Marcus felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Two paths, both dangerous, both irreversible. I need to talk to Ethan, he said. This affects him more than anyone. He deserves a voice in the choice. That evening in their Arlington apartment, Marcus explained everything to his son. The confrontation with Harrison, the threats, the options. Ethan listened without interruption, his young face serious in a way that no 10-year-old's face should be. What do you think, Dad? He asked when Marcus finished. I think both options are risky. I think there's no perfect choice. That's not what I asked. Ethan's eyes met his. I asked what you think, not about the risks, about the right thing to do. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, remembering Elena's words. Trust yourself. You've always known the right thing to do. I think the technology exists to help people. I think hiding it serves our interests, but not theirs. And I think that if we have the power to change the world, we have the responsibility to try. Ethan nodded slowly. Then we should try. Even if it's dangerous. The world is always dangerous, but it's less dangerous when good people do something instead of nothing. Ethan took his father's hand. That's what Mom would say, right? Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. Yeah, buddy, that's exactly what she would say. The next morning, Marcus made 2 calls. The first was to Director Harrison, accepting the meeting but specifying neutral ground. A coffee shop in downtown Arlington public, and Vivant visible where both parties would be constrained by witnesses. The second was to Margaret Chen, initiating the release protocols that Graves had prepared decades ago. The meeting with Harrison happened 3 hours later. The director sat across from Marcus in a corner booth, 2 cups of coffee between them that neither touched. His expression was confident, expectant. I'm glad you've decided to be reasonable, Mr. Cole. I haven't decided anything yet. I wanted to clarify some things first. Such as? Marcus pulled out his phone and set it on the table. Such as the fact that this conversation is being recorded and live-streamed to a secure server. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every 12 hours, the recording goes public along with 35 years of documentation on your agency's illegal activities. Harrison's confident expression flickered. That would be inadvisable. So would threatening my son. Marcus leaned forward. Let me be clear, Director. I'm not the scared, desperate man you've been watching. I have resources now. I have protection. And I have nothing to lose. Everyone has something to lose. Wrong. I've already lost everything that mattered. My career, my wife, my future. Marcus's voice was cold. "What remains is my son and my integrity. Threaten either one, and I'll burn your agency to the ground, even if it destroys me in the process." Harrison studied him for a long moment. "You're bluffing." "Test me." The silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Finally, Harrison spoke. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave me and my family alone. I want the surveillance stopped. I want your agency to forget that this property or this technology ever existed. And in return, I won't release the documentation I have. I won't go public with evidence of your illegal activities. I'll let you walk away clean." Harrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think it's that simple? You think I'm the only one interested in what Graves created?" "There are forces at play here that you don't understand, Mr. Cole. Forces that won't be deterred by threats or documentation." "Then we have a problem." "We have an opportunity." Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I'm not your enemy, Mr. Cole. I'm the closest thing to a friend you have in this situation. There are others, other agencies, other interests who would not negotiate, who would not threaten, who would simply act. Is that supposed to scare me? It's supposed to inform you. The technology you're guarding is worth more than you can imagine. Not just financially, but strategically. Nations would go to war over what's hidden on your property. Corporations would kill for it. The only reason you're still breathing is because the players are still assessing the situation." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't let it show. "Then the solution is obvious." "Is it?" "If the technology is released publicly, there's nothing to fight over. No strategic advantage to seize. No secret to protect or acquire." Marcus smiled grimly. "That's the real reason you're here, isn't it? You're not trying to acquire the technology. You're trying to prevent its release." Harrison's expression confirmed the truth before he spoke. Public release would be catastrophic. Economic collapse. Social upheaval. The end of the energy industry as we know it. The end of scarcity. The end of energy poverty. The end of wars fought over oil and gas. You're naive if you think it would be that simple. And you're corrupt if you think suppression is the answer. Marcus stood. "This conversation is over. You have 24 hours to withdraw your surveillance and leave my family alone. After that, I release everything. You'll destroy yourself along with us." "Maybe, but the technology survives, the knowledge spreads, and eventually the world changes anyway." Marcus picked up his phone. 24 hours, Director. Choose wisely." He walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. His hands didn't start shaking until he reached his car. The next 24 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. He moved Ethan to the cabin where Graves had prepared a safe room in the laboratory complex. If Harrison decided to act, the boy would be protected by layers of security that would buy time for the release protocols to complete. At the apartment, Marcus sat alone watching the clock and waiting for either withdrawal or attack. The call came at hour 23. "You've made your point," Harrison said. His voice was tired, defeated. "Surveillance is withdrawn. My agency will no longer pursue this matter." "And the others, the forces you mentioned?" "I can't speak for them, but I can tell you that without our support, they have fewer options than they did yesterday." There was a pause. "You've won, Mr. Cole. For now. But this isn't over. It will never be over." "I know." "Then why do it? Why sacrifice everything for technology you barely understand?" Marcus thought of Ethan in the safe room, of Elena's last words, of the 18 families in Montana who now had heat and light because of what they'd built. "Because some things are worth sacrificing for," he said. "Goodbye, Director." He ended the call and sat for a long moment in the silence of the empty apartment. Then he called Graves. "It's done. Harrison's backing off." "I heard. Margaret is standing by with the release protocols. Do you want to proceed?" Marcus looked around. The apartment that had been their home for so long. The worn furniture, the stained carpet, the bills piled on the counter. This wasn't home anymore. Home was a cabin in the Virginia wilderness with his son and an old scientist who had given them everything. "Proceed," Marcus said. "It's time to change the world." The release happened at midnight on a Sunday, 6 months after Marcus had bought the cabin with his last $50. Margaret Chen coordinated everything from a secure location in Richmond. Technical specifications went to 12 major universities simultaneously. Patent filings hit government offices in 14 countries. And a comprehensive video explaining the technology, narrated by Walter Graves, himself, uploaded to every major platform on the internet. Within hours, the video had 10 million views. By morning, it had 100 million. Marcus watched the numbers climb from the laboratory, Ethan asleep on a cot in the corner. Graves monitoring news feeds on multiple screens. "It's happening," the old man said quietly. 35 years of hiding, and now the whole world knows. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." Graves smiled slightly, but also relieved. The burden is no longer mine alone. It belongs to everyone now. The first calls came from news organizations wanting interviews, then scientists demanding verification, then government officials demanding explanations. Marcus ignored them all following the protocol they had established. No public appearances, no direct statements. Let the technology speak for itself. The verification process took 3 days. Teams at MIT, Stanford, and the Max Planck Institute independently confirmed that the devices worked exactly as described. Clean, unlimited energy from principles that challenged everything they thought they knew about physics. On day 4, the first protests began. Oil company workers marched in Houston, terrified for their jobs. Utility executives held emergency meetings, their stock prices plummeting. Politicians who had taken energy industry donations scrambled to respond to a technology that could make their benefactors obsolete. "This is what I feared," Graves said, watching footage of angry crowds. "The disruption, the chaos." "It's also what you hoped for," Marcus replied. "Change always hurts, but it also heals." On day 5, Marcus received a call he hadn't expected. "Mr. Cole, this is Senator Williams from Montana. I represent the community where you deployed those energy devices last year." Marcus's heart raced. "Senator?" "I've been talking to my constituents, the ones who have had reliable power for the first time in their lives, the ones whose children can now do homework at night, the ones who aren't burning their savings on heating bills anymore." The senator paused. "They wanted me to thank you." "I didn't do it alone." "I know, Dr. Graves is a remarkable man, but he chose you for a reason." Williams's voice softened. "I'm calling because I want to help. Congress is going to debate this technology, and not everyone will be sympathetic. You need allies who understand what's at stake. What do you want in return?" "I want my constituents to keep their power. I want other communities like mine just to get access, and I want to be on the right side of history." Williams chuckled. "Is that too much to ask?" "Not at all, Senator, not at all." The alliance with Williams proved crucial in the weeks that followed. Congressional hearings were inevitable, but with Williams coordinating sympathetic voices, the tone shifted from hostile interrogation to genuine inquiry. Scientists testified about the technology's potential. Community leaders described the transformation they had witnessed. Even a few brave economists argued that managed disruption was preferable to perpetual scarcity. Marcus testified on day 12 of the hearings. He wore his best suit, the one he had bought for Secret Service ceremonies years ago. Ethan sat in the gallery watching his father with pride that Marcus could feel across the room. "Mr. Cole," the committee chairman began, "you're asking us to believe that technology hidden for 35 years can suddenly solve the world's energy problems. Doesn't that seem fantastical?" "It seemed fantastical to me too, Senator, until I saw it work, until I watched families get power for the first time, until I understood that impossible things become possible when someone is brave enough to try. But the economic implications are significant. I won't pretend otherwise. Industries will change, jobs will be lost, but new industries will emerge, new jobs will be created, and for the first time in human history, energy will not be a barrier to human flourishing. Some of your critics say you're being naive. Some of my critics have financial interests in maintaining scarcity." Marcus let the words land before continuing. "I'm not asking Congress to mandate anything. I'm asking you to not prevent progress. Let communities choose. Let markets adapt. Let humanity benefit from knowledge that should have been shared decades ago." The hearing continued for another 3 hours, but Marcus knew he had won the room within the first 10 minutes. The questions shifted from hostile to curious to supportive. By the end, even skeptical senators were asking how their constituents could get access to the technology. Ethan was waiting when Marcus emerged from the hearing room. "You were amazing, Dad." "I was terrified." "You didn't look terrified. You looked like someone who knew exactly what he was doing." Ethan hugged him tight. "Mom would have been so proud." Marcus held his son and let the tears come, not caring who saw. They had fought so hard to reach this moment. They had risked everything, and somehow, impossibly, they were winning. But not everyone was ready to let them win. The attack came 3 weeks later. Marcus and Ethan were at the cabin working with Graves on plans for the next phase of deployment. The security system triggered an alert at 2:47 a.m. Multiple contacts, Graves said, studying the monitors. Coming from the north, professional movement patterns. Marcus was already reaching for the emergency kit. How many? 8? Maybe 10? They have the forest approach covered. Who are they? Does it matter? Graves activated the laboratory's lockdown protocols. Get Ethan to the safe room. I'll handle this. You're 82 years old, and I've been preparing for this moment for 35 years. Graves pulled something from beneath his workbench, a device Marcus didn't recognize. The safe room, Marcus, now. Marcus grabbed Ethan, who was already awake, and alert his training kicking in automatically. Stay close, move fast, don't make a sound. They descended deeper into the laboratory complex past the main workspace to a reinforced chamber that Graves had shown them during their first weeks. The walls were solid concrete, the door was steel, and the room was stocked with supplies for a week-long siege. What's happening? Ethan whispered once they were inside. Someone's making a move, trying to take the technology before it spreads too far. But it's already public. Everyone knows. They don't want the technology. They want to destroy it, and anyone who can replicate it. The sound of explosions reached them even through the reinforced walls. Gunfire, shouting, then silence. Marcus's phone buzzed, a message from Graves. Threat neutralized. Stay put. Authorities en route. It's over, as Marcus said, not quite believing it. Mr. Graves stopped them. Apparently. They waited another 40 minutes before Graves's voice came through the intercom. It's safe. You can come out. Marcus emerged from the safe room to find the laboratory undamaged, but Graves sitting heavily in a chair, his face pale. What happened? Private military contractors, hired by parties unknown, though I have suspicions. Graves gestured toward the monitors. The defense systems I installed years ago proved effective, non-lethal mostly. They'll wake up with headaches and find themselves being questioned by federal agents. You planned for this. I planned for everything. Graves's voice was tired, but I'm not as young as I used to be. The stress. He pressed a hand to his chest. I may need to rest soon. Medical attention? You need medical attention. I need to see this through. Graves's eyes met Marcus's. Promise me, whatever happens, you'll continue the work. Nothing's going to happen. Everything happens eventually. Graves smiled weakly. Promise me, Marcus. Promise me that what I built will survive. Marcus knelt beside the old man, taking his hand. I promise. Ethan and I will protect your legacy. We'll share the technology with everyone who needs it. We'll change the world. Good. Graves closed his eye. Good. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. Graves had suffered a mild heart attack brought on by the stress of the attack. The doctors said he was stable but needed rest. Marcus stayed at his bedside for 3 days. On the 4th day, Graves opened his eyes and asked for Ethan. I have something for you, the old man said when the boy arrived. Something I've been saving. He reached into the pocket of his hospital gown and withdrew a small object, a brass compass weathered with age engraved with initials that Marcus didn't recognize. This belonged to my father, Graves said. He gave it to me when I was about your age. He said that a compass doesn't tell you where to go, but it always tells you where you are. That's more important than most people realize. Ethan took the compass carefully, reverently. I'll take care of it. I know you will, just like I know you'll take care of everything else. Graves looked at Marcus. You chose well, Mr. Cole. When I first watched you at that auction, I saw a desperate man, but I also saw a father who would do anything for his son. That's rarer than you might think. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Of course you could. It would have taken longer. But you would have found a way. Graves's voice was fading. That's why I chose you. Not because you needed help, but because you were the kind of person who helps others even when you need help yourself. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Graves's eyes closed again. Is he going to be okay? Ethan whispered. I hope so, buddy. I really hope so. Graves left the hospital a week later, weaker but determined. He moved permanently into the cabin, no longer able to manage the stress of direct involvement in Foundation operations. But his mind remained sharp, and his guidance continued to shape every major decision. The Foundation expanded rapidly in the months that followed. Senator Williams helped push through legislation that protected the technology from corporate suppression. Universities established research programs to improve and adapt the devices. Manufacturing partnerships emerged in countries around the world. 1 year after the public release, 5,000 communities had access to Graves' technology. 2 years after 50,000. By the third year, the number was beyond counting. Marcus traveled constantly meeting with government officials, community leaders, scientists, and skeptics. Ethan, now 13, often accompanied him, proving to be an even more effective ambassador than his father. "You explain it better than I do," Marcus told him after a particularly successful presentation to the United Nations. "I explain it differently, not better." Ethan grinned. "Kids don't trust adults, but they trust other kids, and their parents trust whatever makes their kids happy. When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You're just starting to notice." It was a running joke between them now, a callback to that moment in the car years ago when everything was still falling apart. But some things weren't jokes. The attack on the cabin had been only the first of many attempts to stop the Foundation's work. Security became a constant concern. Marcus implemented protocols he had learned in the Secret Service, adapting protection strategies for their unique situation. They faced corporate sabotage, political opposition, and occasionally violence. But they also found allies in unexpected places. Former enemies became supporters when they realized the technology benefited their communities too. Even some of Harrison's former colleagues reached out, offering intelligence about ongoing threats. "The world is changing," Graves observed during one of their evening conversations. "Faster than I ever imagined." "Is that good or bad?" "Both, always both." The old man looked out the window at the forest that had hidden him for so long. "But mostly good, I think. For the first time in human history, energy isn't a zero-sum game. There's enough for everyone. That changes everything. It doesn't change human nature." "No, but it changes the circumstances that shape human behavior. People fight over scarcity. When scarcity disappears, what's left to fight about?" Marcus didn't have an answer, but he hoped desperately that Graves was right. The turning point came in year 4. A coalition of nations led by countries that had benefited most from the technology proposed a global initiative. Free energy access for every community on Earth within a decade. The cost would be enormous, but the benefits would be incalculable. Marcus testified before the United Nations General Assembly. 15 years ago, he began, I was a Secret Service agent who got shot protecting someone else's life. 5 years ago, I was a broke single father with $50 to my name trying to figure out how to keep my son fed. Today, I'm asking you to change the world." He told them about Elena, about her death, and her last words. He told them about Ethan, about a 10-year-old boy who saw possibilities where others saw only problems. He told them about Graves, about a genius who spent 35 years hiding because the world wasn't ready for what he had created. "The world is ready now," Marcus said. "I've seen it in the faces of families who have power for the first time. I've heard it in the voices of children who can now see to do their homework at night. I've felt it in communities that were dying but are now thriving." He paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. "My wife used to say that we should leave the world better than we found it. That's what we're asking you to help us do. Not for profit, not for power, but for every family that deserves the chance to build a better life." The vote passed 187 to 3. That night, Marcus called Ethan from his hotel room in New York. "We did it, buddy. The initiative passed." "I know. I was watching online." Ethan's voice cracked with emotion. "Dad, do you remember when we used to talk about what we would do if we ever had money, if we ever had security?" "I remember. I said I wanted to help people. I said I wanted to make sure no one else felt as scared and desperate as we did." Ethan paused. "We're doing it, Dad. We're actually doing it." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "Yeah, buddy, we're doing it." "Mom would be proud." "She'd be more proud of you than me." Marcus wiped his eyes. "Get some sleep. We have a lot of work to do tomorrow." "Always a lot of work." "That's the price of changing the world." He hung up and stood at the window, looking out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. Each light represented energy, power, the fundamental requirement of modern life. Soon those lights would be everywhere, in villages without electric grids, in communities without infrastructure, in homes that had never known the simple miracle of flipping a switch and watching darkness become light. $50. That's what it had cost to buy a broken-down cabin in the Virginia wilderness. $50 and a desperate man's willingness to take a chance on something better. The return on that investment was beyond calculation. Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here, the auction, the hidden compartments, the laboratory, Graves emerging from the shadows, Harrison's threats, the attacks and the victories and the endless work of building something that could survive. He thought about Elena, about her face in those final moments, about the promise he had made and struggled to keep and was finally impossibly fulfilling. Take care of our boy. He had. Against all odds, through every challenge, he had taken care of their boy, and together they had taken care of so much more. His phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Can't sleep. Too excited. Can we call Mr. Graves tomorrow and tell him about the vote? Marcus smiled through his tears. First thing in the morning, he'll want to hear every detail. Love you, Dad. Love you too, buddy. More than you know. He set the phone down and returned to the window. The city glowed before him, millions of lights burning against the darkness. But for the first time in years, Marcus didn't see the lights as symbols of what he couldn't afford or what he had lost. He saw them as promises. Promises of warmth and safety and possibility. Promises that were spreading across the world one community at a time, one family at a time. Promises that a desperate man and his brave son had helped make possible. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. There would always be more communities, to reach more challenges, to overcome more battles to fight. But tonight, Marcus allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten how to feel. Peace. 5 years had passed since Marcus Cole bought a ruined cabin with his last $50. 5 years that had transformed not just his life, but the lives of millions of people across the globe. The morning of the anniversary began like any other at the cabin. Marcus woke at 6, made coffee in the kitchen that he and Ethan had rebuilt with their own hands, and walked to the window to watch the sunrise over the Virginia mountains. But this morning was different. This morning, Walter Graves did not emerge from his bedroom for breakfast. Marcus found him still in bed, eyes closed, hands folded peacefully across his chest. The old man had passed some time during the night, quietly without struggle, as if he had simply decided it was time to rest. "Dad," Ethan's voice came from the doorway. "Is Mr. Graves okay?" Marcus couldn't speak. He could only shake his head, and Ethan understood. The boy, 15 now, tall and lean, and so much like his mother, crossed the room and stood beside his father. They looked down at the man who had changed everything. "He waited," Ethan said quietly. "He waited until the initiative passed, until he knew the work would continue. He always planned everything. Even this." Marcus thought about it. Thought about how Graves had seemed more tired lately, how he had spent extra time organizing his papers and files, how he had been unusually sentimental in their recent conversations. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Even this." They buried Walter Graves 3 days later in the clearing behind the cabin beneath the oak tree where he used to sit and watch the sunset. The funeral was small by necessity, but attended by people who understood what they had lost. Senator Williams flew in from Montana. Margaret Chen came from Richmond. Scientists who had worked with Graves's technology sent representatives. Even a few former government officials who had once opposed them came to pay respects. Marcus spoke at the graveside. "I met Walter Graves 5 years ago when I was at the lowest point of my life. I had lost my wife. I was about to lose my home. I had nothing left except my son and $50 in my pocket." He paused, looking at the simple wooden marker they had placed at the grave. Walter could have chosen anyone to inherit his work. He had been watching, waiting for 35 years. He saw thousands of people come and go from this property, but he chose me. Not because I was special, but because I was desperate enough to take a chance and honest enough to do the right thing with what I found. Marcus felt tears running down his face, but didn't wipe them away. The world will remember Walter Graves as a genius, as the man who solved humanity's energy crisis, as a revolutionary who changed everything. But I'll remember him as the man who gave a broken father and his scared son a reason to hope again. Ethan stepped forward and placed the brass compass on the grave. "He gave me this," the boy said, his voice steady despite his tears. "He said it would always tell me where I am, even when I don't know where I'm going. I want him to have it back, so wherever he is now, he'll always know he's home." The small crowd dispersed slowly, leaving Marcus and Ethan alone with the grave. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. "We keep working, we keep building, we make sure his legacy survives. But without him, we're not without him." Marcus put his arm around his son. "Everything he taught us, everything he built, everything he believed in, it's all still here. He's gone, but his work continues. That's the only immortality any of us really gets." They stood there until the sun set, father and son guardians of a legacy that belonged now to the world. The months following Graves's death were the hardest Marcus had faced since Elena died. The foundation work continued, but every decision felt heavier without Graves's guidance. Every challenge seemed more daunting. Every success felt incomplete without the old man there to share it. But Ethan stepped up in ways Marcus hadn't expected. At 15, the boy had become an essential part of the Foundation's operations. His understanding of the technology rivaled many professional engineers. His communication skills made him an effective spokesperson, and his unwavering commitment to the mission inspired everyone around him. "You're carrying too much," Marcus told him one evening. "You're still a kid. You should be worrying about school and friends and normal teenage things." "There's nothing normal about our lives, Dad. There never has been." Ethan smiled. "Besides, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be." "Your mother would say I'm robbing you of your childhood." "Mom would say I'm growing into the person I'm meant to become." Ethan's expression softened. "She always believed in potential. In becoming. Remember what she used to say?" Marcus nodded slowly.
The ideal es alguien.
"The best version of yourself is the one that helps others become their best versions too." "Exactly. That's what we're doing. That's what Mr. Graves gave us the chance to do." Ethan put his hand on his father's shoulder. "Stop feeling guilty for letting me be part of something important." Marcus laughed despite himself. "When did you become the parent in this relationship?" "Around the time you started needing someone to tell you everything's going to be okay." Ethan grinned. "It's going to be okay, Dad. We've got this." The Foundation's work accelerated in the year following Graves's death. The global initiative was proceeding ahead of schedule. 50,000 communities now had access to the technology, and the number grew daily. Manufacturing partnerships in 20 countries produced devices that shipped to every continent, but success brought new challenges. "We're getting reports of counterfeit devices," Margaret Chen told Marcus during their weekly call. "Inferior copies that don't work properly. Some have even caused injuries. Can we stop them?" "We're trying, but the technology is public now. Anyone with the right equipment can attempt to replicate it." "Then we need quality control, certification programs, ways for communities to verify they're getting genuine devices." "That requires infrastructure we don't have." "Then we build it." Marcus's voice was firm. "Walter didn't give us this responsibility so we could watch people get hurt by bad copies. We find a way." They found a way. Working with universities and government agencies, the Foundation established a global certification network. Every device could be tested and verified. Every manufacturer could be held accountable. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better than doing nothing. The first anniversary of Graves's death arrived quietly. Marcus and Ethan returned to the grave at sunset as they had every month since the burial. The oak tree had grown larger, its branches spreading to shade the simple marker. "I miss him, Ethan said. "More than I expected to. He was like a grandfather, the grandfather you never had." "He was more than that." Ethan knelt beside the grave. "He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He believed I could be part of something important even when I was just a scared kid who missed his mom." "You were never just a scared kid." "I was terrified, Dad. Every day I was terrified. Of losing you, of being hungry, of having no place to live." Ethan's voice cracked. "But I couldn't show it because you were already carrying so much. Someone had to believe things would get better." Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. His son, his brave, beautiful son, had been protecting him even while Marcus thought he was protecting Ethan. "I'm so sorry, buddy. I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to know. That was the point." Ethan stood and faced his father. "But it's okay now. Everything Mr. Graves promised came true. We're not scared anymore. We're not hungry. We have a home that nobody can take away from us. And we have work that matters. The most important work in the world." Ethan smiled through his tears. "Mom would be proud of us. She'd be prouder of you than me. She'd be proud of both of us, and she'd tell us to stop crying and get back to work." Marcus laughed, wiping his eyes. "Yeah, that's exactly what she'd say." The second major test came 6 months later. A coalition of energy companies, the last desperate holdouts who had refused to adapt, launched a coordinated legal assault on the Foundation. Patent challenges, regulatory complaints, accusations of fraud and deception. "They're trying to drown us in litigation," Margaret Chen reported. "They don't expect to win, but they want to slow us down, distract us, drain our resources." Marcus reviewed the mountain of legal filings. "How much would it cost to fight all of this when you... More than we have. They know that." "So what do we do?" "Well, we have options. None of them are good." The options included settling, which would legitimize the attacks, or fighting, which could take years and divert resources from actual work, or going public with a strategy which could backfire in unpredictable ways. Marcus called Ethan into the conference room. I need your perspective on something. The lawsuits, you know about them. I read everything that comes through the foundation. Ethan sat down across from his father. They're trying to scare us, to make us think we're vulnerable. Are we vulnerable? Everyone's vulnerable, but we're also strong. Ethan leaned forward. Think about who we are, Dad. Think about our story. A broke Secret Service agent and his son given a chance to change the world by a genius who spent 35 years hiding from exactly these kinds of people. So we tell that story. Again, louder. Ethan's eyes were intense. The world already knows us. They know what we've done. If we explain what's happening now, if we show people that the same forces that tried to suppress the technology are now trying to destroy the foundation, we turn public opinion into a weapon. We turn truth into a weapon, the most powerful weapon there is. Marcus stared at his son. You really are your mother's child. I'm both of yours. That's what makes me dangerous. The press conference happened a week later. Marcus stood before a room full of journalists, cameras flashing microphones recording every word. 5 years ago, I was a disabled veteran with $50 to my name. I bought a ruined cabin because I had nothing to lose. What I found there changed everything. He outlined the attacks, the coordinated legal assault, the attempt to slow the Foundation's work through bureaucratic warfare. These companies don't want to stop our technology. They can't. It's public. It belongs to everyone. What they want is to stop us from helping communities access it. They want to preserve as much of their dying monopoly as possible, even if it means families go without power. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. I'm asking everyone who has benefited from this technology to speak up, to tell your story, to remind the world why this work matters. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, social media exploded with testimonials. Families sharing how the technology had changed their lives. Communities celebrating their first reliable power. Children describing what it meant to study at night without candles or kerosene lamps. Within days, the legal coalition began to fracture. Companies withdrew from the suits. Executives issued statements distancing themselves from the strategy. By the end of the month, every case had been dropped or settled on terms favorable to the Foundation. You turned their attack into advertising, Margaret Chen said, her voice a mix of admiration and exhaustion. The whole world is talking about us again. Ethan's idea, not mine. Then you've raised a remarkable son. His mother gets the credit. I just try not to mess up what she started. The years that followed became a blur of work and growth and change. Ethan turned 16, then 17, then 18. He graduated from high school while simultaneously taking university courses in engineering and physics. His understanding of Graves's technology had evolved beyond mere replication into genuine innovation. I think I can improve the efficiency by another 12%, say, he told Marcus during one of their late-night sessions in the laboratory. There's a resonance pattern that Mr. Graves missed, probably because the computing power didn't exist when he developed the original design. Show me. Ethan pulled up simulations on the laboratory's computer systems, complex diagrams that Marcus could only partially understand. The key is here. Ethan pointed to a particular junction in the schematic. If we modulate the field at this frequency instead of the original, we get more output with less input. It's not a huge improvement individually, but across millions of devices. It adds up to a revolution within a revolution. Exactly. Ethan's face glowed with the same passion Marcus had seen in Graves years ago. I want to publish the improvement. Make it available to everyone like Mr. Graves did with the original technology. You should. This is your contribution now, your legacy. Ethan was quiet for a moment. It's not about legacy, it's about helping people. That's what legacy is, buddy, the help that continues after you're gone. The improvement was published on the 10th anniversary of the cabin purchase. Ethan Cole, now 19, stood before the same United Nations General Assembly where his father had testified years earlier. 10 years ago, I was a scared kid eating granola bars for dinner because my dad and I couldn't afford real food. Today, I'm presenting a refinement to technology that provides clean energy to over 100 million people worldwide. He walked the delegates through the technical details, making complex concepts accessible in a way that only someone who truly understood them could. My father taught me that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. Dr. Walter Graves taught me that genius means nothing without compassion. And my mother, who I lost when I was 8 years old, taught me that we should leave the world better than we found it. Ethan paused, looking out at the assembled representatives of nations. I'm not here to take credit for anything. I'm here to give back. This improvement, like the original technology, belongs to everyone. Use it, build on it, make it better. That's how we honor the people who came before us, not with monuments or memorials, but with continued progress. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Marcus watched from the gallery, tears streaming down his face, his heart bursting with pride and grief and joy so intermingled he couldn't separate them. You did it, Elena, he whispered. You raised an amazing son. I just helped. After the ceremony, father and son walked together through the streets of New York, neither of them speaking, both of them processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Dad, Ethan finally broke the silence. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face his son. I'm looking at a young man who is everything I hoped you would become, everything your mother believed you could be. I couldn't have done any of it without you. That's not true. You would have found a way. You always find a way. Maybe, but I wouldn't have wanted to. Ethan's voice was serious. Everything I do because you showed me it was possible. Because you didn't give up when everyone else would have. Because you took a chance on a broken-down cabin when we had nothing left to lose. They embraced there on the sidewalk, 2 people who had traveled from desperation to purpose, from poverty to influence, from a broken family to one that had helped heal a broken world. What's next, Wartka? Marcus asked when they finally separated. Everything. Ethan grinned. We've solved energy. Now let's see what else we can fix. They returned to the cabin that evening, flying into the small airstrip that the Foundation had built nearby. The property had expanded over the years, the laboratory complex growing to accommodate research and manufacturing, but the original cabin remained unchanged. Marcus insisted on that. The cabin was where it all began. The cabin was home. He stood on the front porch as the sun set, looking out at the clearing where he had first seen the vine-covered structure that would change his life. So much had changed since that day. So much had stayed the same. Ethan joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. Remember the first time we came here? The young man asked. Every detail. You said the cabin was perfect. It was. It is. Ethan handed his father a cup. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't bid at that auction, if you had decided the risk was too great. I think about that too. Would we have been okay? Marcus considered the question carefully. We would have survived. Somehow. But survival isn't the same as living. What we have now, what we've built, it's not just life, it's purpose, it's meaning, it's everything your mother wanted for us. She wanted us to be happy. She wanted us to be useful, to matter, to leave the world better than we found it. Marcus sipped his coffee. That's the same thing as happiness, really. When you know your life means something, happiness follows. They watched the last light fade from the sky, the stars emerging one by one until the night was blazing with them. I'm going to keep going, Dad. Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. Even when you can't anymore. I'm going to keep building, keep improving, keep helping, for as long as I live. I know you will. Not because of obligation, because I want to, because this is who I am now. Marcus felt peace settle into his bones, the kind of peace he had never expected to feel again after Elena died, the kind of peace that comes from knowing your life's work is in capable hands. Your mother would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us. Ethan turned to face his father. You took a chance, Dad. When everything was against you, when you had every reason to give up, you took a chance on something better. That's the real legacy. Not the technology, not the foundation, the willingness to hope when hope seemed impossible. Marcus nodded slowly. Walter used to say that impossibility is just a failure of imagination. He was right, and you proved it. Ethan raised his coffee cup. To impossible things. Marcus raised his own cup. To impossible things. They clinked cups and drank together, father and son, on the porch of a cabin that had cost $50 and changed the world. Later that night, Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table holding a photograph he kept in his wallet. Elena on their wedding day, young and beautiful and so full of hope for the future. I kept my promise, he told her. I took care of our boy. I did everything I could to help him become who he was meant to be. He traced the outline of her face with his finger. But you knew, didn't you? You knew he would be extraordinary. That's why your last words weren't just about taking care of him. They were about trusting myself, about believing that I could be more than I thought I was. He set the photograph on the table and looked around the kitchen. The same kitchen where he had sat 5 years ago, counting his last $50, wondering how he would feed his son. The same kitchen, but everything different now. "Thank you for believing in me," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me Ethan. Thank you for everything." He picked up the photograph and pressed it to his heart. "I love you, Elena. I always will." The night deepened around the cabin. The laboratory hummed quietly underground. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal patterns. And Marcus Cole, who had once been a desperate man with nothing left to lose, sat in the home he had built with his son and felt the weight of everything they had accomplished. $50, a broken-down cabin, a mystery that led to treasure beyond imagining. But the real treasure had never been the technology or the money or the foundation. The real treasure was Ethan. The real treasure was purpose. The real treasure was learning that even the most broken things could be healed if someone was willing to try. Marcus looked out the window at the first hints of dawn touching the mountains. A new day was coming, a new chapter waiting to be written, and somewhere out there in villages and cities and communities around the world, families were waking up with power they had never had before. Children were studying by lights that never went out. Parents were cooking meals on stoves that didn't require fuel they couldn't afford. All because one desperate father had taken a chance on something better. All because a scared 10-year-old boy had believed that broken things could be made whole. All because love in the end was stronger than fear. Marcus smiled as the sun rose over the Virginia mountains. The work would continue. The mission would endure. The legacy would grow. But right now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. A father, a son, a home, and a world that was a little bit better than it was before. That was enough. That was everything. That was the real meaning of the $50 that had changed the world forever.